All right, guys, let's have a look at the third declension. So, guys, when I tell you to do the third declension, you need to do it. All right, unlike Jameson over here creating his own Pokemon cards, which is a great use of your time, but not during Latin. Okay,
I got 3 of them.
so far, who I'm seeing has actually tried to do the third declension is Jaded, Felicity, Nick, who knows it. I get and like that's it. Come on, guys.
No, I did it.
Someone like Ryan, he knows it. He knows it, you know. But do all of you know it? Abby's got it.
I did.
Okay.
I just kind of like
Okay. So it was a little more than I could just easily tell with my eyeballs. But okay. All right, guys. Let's kind of get started by looking at it. Tomorrow we'll go through it slowly, but for today we got plenty to do. So let's just look at it all at once. Remember, we decided on the singular side, it's almost just like 2 endings you have to know. You need to know that you don't need to know this one, but you do need to know the IS, and then you just drop that S to get the thing below it. You need to know the EM, I think it's the easiest one, and drop the M to get the one below it. That's just 2 endings on the singular side, if you can do the trick that I just described.
It's gonna be hard.
I mean, you tell me. I think this is the easiest one, truly. As I'm teaching it more and more, I'm like, this is the easiest one. ES goes in plural subject and direct object form. There's only 3 endings on the plural side. That's one. The other one is the ibis, that sandwiches the ES. And then the UM, which I really don't like, but maybe it's easy to remember because it's kind of obnoxious to have the UM showing up there. Pierce?
I don't like that. That's like what I
Right, it makes me think of second declension masculine or neuter accusative or neuter nominative. And so I really do loathe that UM. I'm not just saying that. Guys, remember if you want to get a bonus point on this one, you don't want to put the UM here like you did last Friday. You want to put a second question mark here because neuter third declension nouns, they just reuse their nominative form in the direct object. They don't get the EM. And then put the same A's that you put on the second declension because second declension plural neuters in the second or third declension, they all kind of behave the same way. Any questions, comments, tips, tricks, pointers, critiques, observations, desires? Gavin?
$1 million.
Fair enough, fair enough. The man knows what he wants. He wants money. All right, guys. Ben? Okay, you do look very sleepy, Ben. I will say, so have some of the Turkish delight left over in your lunchbox, and then take a nap. Keegan? No, but like borderline. I am like, this is great, Keegan. I hope this is the beginning of a trend for you of you just like failing your tests. Like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It's just like, oh yeah, the Latin test, yeah, I'm gonna like do really well on it. Like, of course I am, because I'm gonna put in the minimum required amount of time to prep. All right, guys, we're gonna learn chapter 12 today. So this is a note-taking day. It's gonna be a little boring. I'm gonna try my best to make it entertaining and be high energy. I'll try. Remember to raise your hand if you have anything to say. Please ask questions. Notes. I know y'all are just 7th graders, so you barely know what the concept of note-taking is. That is worrisome. Just a couple thoughts on note-taking, guys. I think when I was a kid, I remember at some points, I thought I was just like supposed to like, you know, make my handwriting look really good and write down every single thing that a teacher was saying was part of something that could be notes. But you need to think of what is practical. Write down what you think is actually useful to you. I want you to label this part of your notes, chapter 12 notes. And it should be something that you legitimately can go back to when you're doing homework this or next week or studying for a test. Don't do notes just for the formality of it because the teacher's like, they're notes. No, like write them in a way that actually might help you and label things clearly. For Latin, it's usually not like bullet point things you're having to write out. It's more like charts and stuff. Ace?
Today, Mega Gyarados comes out.
Oh, sick. But for
Pokemon Go.
Pierce? Yep, and let's see. So if more than 4 more people need to go to the bathroom, that's for each one person. After that, I'll start throwing desks out the window. So guys, keep that in mind. Only use the restroom if you like really, truly have to. Because I know how kids are sometimes kind of dishonest about it. You're kind of like, oh, we gotta go to the bathroom. It's like, really? Okay, one more thing, guys. What are you gonna do a little extra on your homework for tomorrow?
You're gonna write a question that you have.
Yeah. And that's it. And also choose one mentally that you're like, I'm comfortable sharing this reading in class, this translation in
So
class.
even if one says, I am a donkey and I hate my life.
I guess so. I don't know why you'd arrive at that. So don't go out of your way to make it funny and goofy. But if it ends up being funny and goofy, share it. And then also your question can address why it didn't come together for you. Some kids are asking like, what if we have no problems with the translations? I think even the highest graded kids in here will still have some issues with this setup of translations. So even if it's something that you eventually clear up for yourself, you can still write it out. Like, oh, for a long time I couldn't tell what case this noun was, and it didn't make sense to me. And then I realized it was accusative, but it was hard for me to realize that because the accusative form is the same as nominative form, or whatever it might be. That'd be a really good one. But be prepared. I'll call on any of you tomorrow to be like, what was your issue?
I heard what you said to Macy yesterday. I've taken that into consideration now.
What did I say to Mace?
In the hallway.
You told her you were gonna throw her.
Did I? Or did I tell her I was sorry for snapping at her?
No.
What was
You
it?
said that you're not gonna call on every single one of us.
Oh, but like I might. You don't know who it's gonna be.
That you were sorry for snapping at her.
Who?
Haley.
Oh yeah. It was really mean. I was starting my 7th period class, and Kaylee, she like walked up to me. She was like, "I found a book," and I was like, because I was trying to start class. Teaching's weird. It makes you do like weird things you can relate with.
Really?
But guys, remember, like you really don't need to tell me if you find a book in your desk. You should definitely just leave it there. Yeah.
I have a copy of the homework.
How do you know that? Okay. There is no copy of the homework because it's in the textbook. Elijah, it's in the textbook, page 101. I'm sorry. You found a book. And take off.
Pokemon card.
No. Take
I
off.
found some weird things there.
Okay. So, this keeps happening today.
Really, I found
I
And-
found some ranch.
Oh, yeah.
This time, I don't know why. Oh.
Mr.
Oh,
I found Abby.
All right, guys. So let's take some notes to review old verb stuff. Elijah, take a seat and take the shades off. Kira, take the shades off. Good job on your test, by the way. I don't know if I called you out, but you did good. So, guys, real quick, I don't want to do this because every time I try to reteach these verbs, it feels like I'm not getting anywhere with them. I asked my 2.5 kids in 3rd period if they had any advice for me, and they were just like, oh, no, those verbs are kind of still hard for us, too. But I wish it wasn't, because Chapter 12 is all about these new verb forms. So before we get into the more exciting new stuff, let's take a look at this old verb from way back in the day that I can tell we're still having trouble with. Yeah, sumese, which means to what, Gavin? To be, right? It should be the most simple verb of all time. But English messes it up by conjugating it into am, into is, into are, and then,
Found a note.
okay, y'all need to chill. So the weird thing about it is not so much that the first person singular form into him. We're actually getting kind of used to that. That's like the alternative if you're not using O. What's weird is that it switches from starting with S to E. And so I think sometimes I'll see other forms of it and it catches you off guard. There's the goofy Billie Eilish song where she's like, I think, therefore I am. That is a reference to a 17th century philosophical concept. This French guy, Descartes, he was so distrustful of everything around him that he felt, Lily, like he couldn't trust reality and that he didn't understand the nature of his own reality. AKA, he wasn't sure if he was just a character in somebody's dream, or if he himself was dreaming, or if he was just a brain in a jar plugged into the matrix. And so what he decided to help himself feel better about the nature of reality and his existence was that he was like, oh, cogito, I think, ergo, therefore, sum, I am. So I don't know why I told you that story necessarily, but cogito, ergo, sum is one of those really like philosophy 101, final warning for Riley and Lily before I move both of you into detention. So sum means I am, right? And what he meant is that as long as I'm thinking and I can like be aware that I'm thinking, I have thought, that is my only proof that I actually exist. Insofar as I think, I am also existing. Because a very strong version of sumese is not just to be, but to exist. Like if it needs to be kind of stronger than just the word be, it can be exist actually. But anyway, also when we played a Pudnos on Friday, and I was trying to get you guys to use more Latin, remember when you were saying like, oh, I'm the inspector or whatever, if that ever happened, that'd be sum inspector, sum medica, if you're a doctor, non sum Catalina, if you're not Catalina, but sum means I am. If you're telling somebody what they are, it's S. S, mala, you are evil, right? If you're telling other people that someone's bad, you would say like, Michael est bonus. Michael is good, right? I just add the T. Because we still have the MST most we expect, but sometimes it's starting with S, sometimes it's starting with E, and that's weird, but it's not too weird, right? It gets weirder when we have to put it in the future in imperfect tense. Unlike every other verb, sum esse gets these tenses in a weird way. What's weird about it, like the stem of its future or imperfect tense form? Anyone? I'd say it's like, where does this R come from? The R is nowhere in the present tense, sum esse. So where does the R come from? Suddenly the stem is ER. A, that could make us think of ero, errare with two R's to go astray. B, it just at that point doesn't really look like sum esse, right? So we just need to like be prepared for the fact that these don't look like sum esse once they're in the future or imperfect. Imperfect is great because if after that R we have an A, that be past tense. If after that R we have an O, I, or U, that is future. I know that rule sounds horrible. I hear myself telling a room full of 12 and 13-year-olds, oh, it's simple. If you see an O, I, or U after the R and this new stem of sum esse, that's future tense. That doesn't sound easy. That sounds really random and weird and complicated. But that is what the rule is, and so be it. What, Noah? Yes. All right, so that is sum esse in the future and imperfect, right? And so we use was and were. Be, am, is, and are. Those are present tense versions of be. They become was and were in the imperfect, and they just become will be in the future. Any questions about any of that? Don't forget, we still have these normal endings for normal verbs. Just because sum and possum are nutty doesn't mean the rest of our verbs are. All of our other verbs get bomb, boss, bot for imperfect. Guys, one upsetting thing to me recently is that as recently as last week, me asking kids about imperfect verbs, what their tense was, people would tell me, oh, is that future? It's understandable. Latin is hard. But I really want y'all to know and feel confident about the fact that you see a BA or an ERA back in the day, in the end of a verb, think of the past tense. Future is the one that's hard that you should worry about getting tripped up on. Imperfect, though, it's BA across the board, or it's RA for possum and sum. For all six of them, right? Future is annoying because it's like I starts to become this pattern, but then we get the word bump take thing, and then it's just B and then O for first singular. So future is the one that's actually kind of annoying. And of course, future's gotten worse for us in a way that I'll talk about in a second, Nevaeh.
So what's food perfect?
That's what we're going to get today. So I know I'm talking about old stuff, and you're like, oh my gosh, why is he talking about this again? Like for some of y'all are comfortable with this, but more of y'all are not. But anyway, we're about to talk about new stuff. What?
What does food mean?
Well, I got to wait to talk about it because it's like definitely, I have a whole explanation for it coming up. But you'll find out though in about 10 minutes or a little more.
Okay.
And then of course we have possum, which is built off of forms of sum esse, right? So don't be thrown off by this, guys. It means to be able to in the infinitive, but of course you should just use can for the present tense. So I hope y'all can see how it's just built off of sum esse. Whereas sum means I am, possum means I can. Whereas s means you are, potest means you can. Whereas s means it is, potest means it can, etc. We're just adding a POT or a POS to the beginning of sum esse. So yeah, we have these two weird verbs, but they're weird together. It's solidarity. They're looking at all the other regular verbs and they're like, are you gonna be like them? And it's like, no, I'm not gonna be if you're not gonna be. And then they're just awful together. And then of course, imperfect and future work the same way. Imperfect, look for that ERA, especially the A. If you see the A, it's gonna be could, not can. And if you see ERO, here I, or here you, it will be able to. But that's rare. I don't think that comes up too much. Okay, and remember, possum does get an infinitive. Gavin, what is the date today? And I don't care about dates, especially on homework, and I don't want people doing homework in class. There's possum in all of its forms here, demonstrating how it's built off of sum esse. Here, a little less confusing, and it's like just possum. Malachi, go ahead and get in your chair. It does look like it's still to sit on your desk like that, just hanging out, but it's not what we do. And then here's sum esse in its three tenses. And then I just want to show y'all In chapter 5, we had the imperfect tenses for our regular verbs, bomba spot, never do that ever again. No, do you hear me?
What?
That's not cool what you just did. Bobus bit for future. And then unfortunately in like what was chapter whatever 8 or something, we had to get the future tense for third and fourth. I don't know why all verb categories, all 4 of them in Latin, if they can all use the same imperfect past tense endings, why can't they all use the same future? I'm not sure. First and second cons use bobus bit, whereas third and fourth you see is like less distinct. AM is a weird one, and then ES, ET, aimless, ageless, int endings. I don't like that because, as I've talked about, they feel less distinct to me. They don't stand out. The language is asking so much of us in early years at that point because it's saying, like, basically you need to be able to look at a verb and know what conjugation it's from. Easy for a Latin teacher who's been at it for years and years. Pretty hard for you guys unless you're looking up every single verb. So just kind of like start to maybe develop a sense of if a verb's third, fourth, first, or second. But I know that's a lot to ask. But anyway, like otherwise these endings would be I based, but the E makes it future. Okay? That's something we practiced as recently as chapter 10. Isaiah?
So like another annoying thing is that in the future third conjugation, the singular second person, ES, that looks exactly like for the nom ending.
Yeah. I know, and that's a problem. Again, as a Latin teacher, I have privilege because it's very easy for me to differentiate nouns from verbs. But thinking about it through y'all's eyes, that's hard. So when nouns can end the same way as like verbs, that's like crazy. Because to me, I'm like, well, it's not the same because like that's a noun, so that's a case ending. Where the verb, it's like a person, number, tense ending. But y'all are just y'all are young children, and a dead language is being forced on you, and y'all are all putting up a really good effort trying to learn it. All right, this is chapter 12. So label your notes at this point. Chapter 12, perfect system. So guys, in chapter 12, we not only get one new tense, we get 3. It's the other 3 tenses in the language. You might be thinking like, how in the heck is that a thing, right? Isn't there just like the present tense, the future, and the past? But it turns out there's actually 2 other flavors of past tense, and there's another kind of future tense. And these are actually very typical in all languages, have some way of attaining all 6 of these tenses, including English. English is so straight up dumb that we have to use helping verbs to attain these different tenses. But of course, the Romans, as well as other Romance language speakers, they like inflections, meaning the endings of words to change. And that's what reflects a different tense, not a bunch of silly helping verbs like was, were, will, has, have, had, etc. Okay, I'm going to explain the concept of the perfect tenses right now, but this might be the most complicated version of it. Elijah, take off the shades, buddy. So remember, guys, I've said this before, but when I talk about grammar in theory, like the idea of the grammar, that's when it's at its worst. Not only does it sound as boring as possible at that point, but it also sounds like it's harder than it really is. But I like to start there, and once we start applying it to the language and examples, that's when you're like, oh, okay, like he was just like talking like on and on for 20 minutes, but it turns out it's just that. Like, okay, that's fine. So if I lose you right here, don't give up. Tune back in for the next slide. But it might sound confusing what I'm about to say. All right, so this is like a timeline. I'm not good at actually creating a timeline in Keynote yet. But if this is the present tense right here, what would this direction be, Gavin?
The future.
Yeah, that'd probably be the future, right? That's traditionally how timelines work in terms of like the future is this way and the past is this way. So we have our present tense. Up until now, and I'm saying this is where the present, I guess, what am I saying? This is all the present tense or something. I don't know, because that's how long the word is. But everything after or before the present tense is obviously the past. But it turns out we have like 3 different modes of expressing the past. What is it, Elijah? You need to start facing, yeah, so when you come back, you're going to face forward, okay? So we've had the imperfect tense. And what the imperfect tense does is it describes something that could be happening right up until the present moment, kind of going into the past. And we use was or were verbing or just verbs sometimes. So yeah, like I was walking. That indicates that I started walking in the past, but maybe I'm still walking. And that's why in English we actually call it not imperfect, but past continuous. Because it started in the past, but it literally goes all the way up to the present moment. Meaning like it could still be happening in the present, whatever this imperfect verb might be that we're talking about. Now today we're getting the perfect tense. So what the perfect tense is, it describes something that started in the past and it ended in the past. It was a completed action that was carried all the way out and completed. It's not ongoing like the imperfect tense is. And then pluperfect is another tense we're going to talk about that happens even further back in time because plu comes from the Latin word plus, which even in English means what then? What does plus mean? Huh?
More.
Yeah, plus literally means more. It's a Latin word that literally means more, minus means less. So anyway, pluperfect is more than perfect. And you're probably thinking like, what's this perfect again? Like, why are we using that? Does anybody, I did explain it once. I don't expect anyone to remember. But does anybody remember what I said imperfectus in Latin means Nevaeh? It's not like imperfect in the way we use that in English. It's more like incomplete. Yes. So whereas imperfect is an incomplete action that started in the past and could still be happening, perfectus means complete. It is a completed action that started in the past and it is done. Where more than complete, it's even further back in time. Ben?
So it could be happened in the past, just like
Yeah. So the Korean War would be pluperfect, whereas
World War II.
the Cold War is perfect, and the war in Afghanistan is imperfect past continuous because it will never end. So let's keep going. All right, let's talk about the kind of helping verbs we use to communicate these three different flavors of the past. So for present tense, we use am, are, or is, or we usually just say like verbs, like he verbs, I verb, you verb. But we've talked about recently that you can use am, is, or are. I am verbing, you are verbing, it is verbing in the present. For imperfect, we don't always, sometimes we just do verb, but you can do was or were verbing because again, it started in the past, might still be happening. Whereas for perfect, we can use has or have. I have done something in the past, and it's over now. It's not continuing now. And for pluperfect, we use had. Now, I never really thought about this in this way until I started teaching Latin. That had implies something taking place further in the past. But I guess when I hear that, I'm like, I guess I see that. Like, I had done my homework versus I have. It's slight. It's a nuance. But apparently, according to like the way Latin grammar works and is translated, like the word had communicates that something happened as far back as possible as far as we can express with just a helping verb, right? Because that's all we're doing. We're using helping verbs to express time. So had is like really far back in time. Have and has is like pretty far back, but not as far back. And then was and were are like really close to the present. Was and were are right up until the present moment. Nevaeh?
So I have a question. Does that mean future perfect means it probably will happen then?
Very good. Yeah, future perfect is will have verb, which so future perfect will
Like
not,
the world's gonna
or just like because we use that string of helping verbs like somewhat commonly. Maybe once a week at some point you'll say something like, "Oh, by next Tuesday I will have done this," but it is rare. So perfect and pluperfect are going to be super common, especially perfect. Just a warning, guys, the perfect tense will basically be the new present tense. We're going to see it like almost more than anything for the next few chapters. Pluperfect will also be common, but future perfect, you'll see it like a couple times this chapter, maybe once every chapter after that, but not too much. Future perfect is rare, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So let's actually talk about how you go about identifying this tense. Because remember, guys, that was actually the least interesting part of it. Unless you're like into grammar theory and time travel, maybe that was interesting. But once you start, huh? No, you don't have to write all of this. I want you to kind of write the second bullet point and then like write this and like circle the third principal part. Because now, guys, we are finally going to use the third principal part of these verbs. this weird conundrum. I agree to that. There's a weird thing. I agree. Where it's like I kind of want to tell kids from day one, like, hey, like you're not gonna like you don't need the third and fourth yet, but you will. In chapter 12, you'll need this, and then in
But they're
chapter
gonna
9.
be like chapter 12. That's so far away.
I know. And then chapter 19, my 2.5 kids just got back to chapter 19, and that's when you finally start to use the force. But it's like a lot to ask of somebody to be like, oh, just like try to learn these forms, even though you don't know what to do with them for like 3 or 4 months. Anyway, let's remind ourselves of what the principal parts even be. Hayden or Ace, how would you describe this first principal part? What do it be?
It would be like
It's present, good. What person and number?
first singular.
Yeah, it's the first person, singular, present tense, indicative, active form. Ignore those last 2 words. I just wanted to, yeah. Technically, verbs have other parameters that we're still kind of working up to. But that's what it is. When you look at a verbs dictionary entry, you see that first person, singular, form first. I, verb. I like, right? James?
Can you pick out all those words so we don't have to write all of them down?
Don't worry about this stuff. If you really want to, because you're like a completionist and you want to get it now. But it's on page probably 99, I'd guess. So the homework's on 101. I bet this is on 98 or 99. I'll probably print out resources. And you guys know me, when I introduce a new concept that is like chart-based, I give you time to learn it, right? I showed y'all the first 2 declensions back in September and didn't test you on them until now, right? So like that's how my class works. I don't expect you to like have these by tomorrow. We're gonna spend the next 2 weeks trying to like attain them and have them in our heads, but it's gonna take a little more time on it. Hopefully by March. Abby? 100, right on 100. Today?
So the first word like that
Amo.
is amo is first active voice. The second amare is the second one. Amavi.
We're building up to Amavi.
And amatum, that is the fourth.
Yeah, that's the fourth principal part. We'll get to the fourth principal part, but that almost means something like loved or something. It's like it's a moment when you turn a verb into an adjective is what that fourth principal part often is. Gav?
Wait, do you want us to circle again in that?
The bolded thing. Okay, so the first principal part is first singular present. It's I, verb. I like in this case. Malachi or Nick Fresh, what is the second principal part? What's the word for that? Amare, debate, huh? Yeah, it's to love, which the word for that is what, anyone? The unconjugated, not finite. Elijah? Anyone. What is this? What's the word for it?
To love?
That's what it means. That's what Nick said, but I don't know why y'all can't think of the word.
Loved.
What is this form? I'm sorry, that's the wrong place.
Infinity.
Yes, this is the infinitive. So that's how verbs work. We have the first singular present
Always will
form.
love.
The infinitive is to love, or to verb, regardless. And then the third principal part, it turns out it was the perfect tense stem, aka the first person singular perfect tense form. So just like amo is first person singular present, this be first person singular perfect. So if you go left to right, it's I love, to love, I loved, or have loved. You can use have if you want to for perfect. We'll talk about that. And this, again, we don't need it right now, but it'd be like love. But anyway, so that third principal part is the first person singular form of amo, amare. Internet kids, I'm going to do a better job of this probably tomorrow or next week of me going through each inning individually. But right now I'm just holding the poster in front of the class. I'm going to go through each one, first person singular, then second, etc. So guys, the perfect tense endings are pretty weird. As you can see with Amavi, the first singular one is a long I. So that's kind of weird because like we haven't ended a verb with an I at all. That's been something that you see at the end of nouns in second declension and dative third declension. But it's kind of weird, right? The second, but it is distinct, right? I don't think we get it mixed up with anything. The second is isti. That's kind of weird, all right? But there is an S in it. We expect an S in the second person, so that's something. The third is just non-distinct. It's just IT. Yeah, this one and this one, they're not distinct at all. So we'll talk about why that could be weird. It's actually, we like the ones better that are very distinct. Because istis is the same as this. You just add an S, so that's like y'all verb. And then third person, what was really weird, erunt, E-R-U-N-T. Where did the E and R come from? Who knows? That one's a really weird one. But again, it stands out. So that's actually a good thing for us. It's actually weird when they're not distinct. So those are the perfect tense endings. You can use have, or in third person's case has. It has verb if you want. But you don't have to, guys. You do not have to use helping verbs to translate the perfect. You can just make them be verbs. And we'll talk about that more, so give me a second.
What was it?
And then real quick, imperfect is actually more consistent because it's ERA across the board. So if you see a verb with this ERA in the back, the same ERA that tells us soon or possum is imperfect tense. That tells us a normal verb will be pluperfect when you see that ERA plus an MST must have sent. And you do need to use had. So you gotta use had for plu. You don't really gotta use anything for perfect. You just need to make it past tense. So let's talk about how we're translating them. I have this Venn diagram here. Guys, as weird as it sounds, as anticlimactic as it might sound, this newfangled, shiny, perfect tense can essentially be translated just like the imperfect tense. That might sound weird to you. There is possibility for nuance that is individual to each one, but both of them can be translated as verb. So for imperfect, we do have this very distinctly imperfect helping verb set of was or were verbing. You can use if you want, but I think lately we've kind of settled on verb. And for perfect, you can use this distinct and nuanced has or have helping verb, but you don't have to. Both of them. Wait, you're saying, Jameson, what was that?
Do we have to write this down?
I honestly think this is a great thing to write down. Like, actually make the diagram. I think it's actually a good idea. Do y'all know what I mean? When I just call myself using the word nuance for like the fifth time. What's a nuance, anyone?
It's
Focus.
a
It's cool,
word,
but focus. Huh?
a word that you make up.
It is, no, nuance actually is a word you make up. Nuance is like, it's, how do I describe it? It's like something very specific. It's like, oh, this essay is very nuanced. Gosh. Guys, I'm going to show you the dictionary entry of nuance because I'm using it a bunch and I literally can't even translate it. So hold that thought. But it means like something made more specific. So you see how there's a nuance to saying, oh, I have walked versus I was walking. Whereas there's almost less of a nuance. And we just say, I walked down the street. And it's like, oh, do you mean you were walking or like you have walked and you're done? It's like, oh, no, I don't know. I just walked. But less nuance. It's less specific. So, okay, that kind of maybe explained it. Gavin? I guess, and guys, don't ever leave your rubber bands on the floor because it'd be gross. I know, I'm not calling out Gavin. I think it's probably one of my 8th grade classes. Sometimes I'll leave and I'll like see the little rubber bands on the floor.
I'll get some.
I respect that. If I see anyone throw something again, we will be hanging out tomorrow after school. And that'll be fun. Or Thursday, I should say. But still, either way, really bad. So yeah, guys, you'll still see verbs with bombast, but you can, was or were verbing, translate them. But if you're just like, you know what, I don't love helping verbs, then just treat both imperfect and perfect as verbed. And I hope y'all know what I mean by verbed by now. There are many verbs in English that don't actually get the ED in the end to express past tense. Can y'all think of any examples?
Did.
Did, yeah. Do versus did. Yeah, it's not do it did or did it did. So if I run in the present tense, do I say I runned in the past? I ran. If I, so run's one. If I think in the present tense, do I thinked in the past? I thought. If I hear is kind of weird because I hear in the present tense, but it's not quite ed. It's not heard. It's heard. So it's still not quite ed, even though it doesn't ed. So hopefully I'll follow that. When I say verb, I'm including words like saw, right? We don't seed something, we saw it in the past. So anyway, I hope y'all understand that that's what I mean by verb. And then these are not part of the Venn diagram because they don't have any overlap. Whereas perfect and imperfect really can be treated the same way if you just go with verbed. Future is always just a will verb. Pluperfect, like I'm saying, is had verb, and there you really do need to bust out this helping verb had. For whatever reason, I guess we decided that had in English expresses something happening way back in the day. And then future perfect, which I'm barely going to talk about today, that's going to be will have verb, like Nevaeh logic together all of 10 minutes ago. Very impressively. Like I said, we won't see future perfect too much. Cade,
What feature perfect if it was like would be like basically setting up a bad relationship. Just I will have love.
I will have love. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, maybe. That'd be a weird way to talk. All right, guys, this is the least appealing slide, and you can boil down the point near the red, the green, and the orange, but maybe ignore everything else. But if you can do a summarized version of those colored bullet points, that's good. So at this point, guys, we probably have like at least 30 verbs, if not more. So how are we going to expect ourselves to know what the perfect stem, aka the third principal part of all these verbs, have been the whole time when we weren't paying attention? Usually it's pretty easy to tell. So on a vocab level, it should usually be easy to tell. Like if you see laudavi, hopefully you're like, yeah, that's coming from laudo laudare. I've known that verb since chapter 1. It means to praise. Cogitavi, it sure still looks like cogito cogitare. That's what happens the majority of the time. But sometimes they look a little different, and like weird things will happen that can tip you off to the fact that they are in the perfect. Because some of the challenge now is just like differentiating perfect from present, or maybe probably not imperfect. Imperfect is still so distinct. Bon bon spot. But anyway, so first conjugation, there is a trend in the first conj. Yeah, where this V shows up out of nowhere. Amo, I like amare, to like amavi, I like. And so where did that V come from? Who knows? But I guess the perfect system dictates that first conjugation verb often with this V. Kogito, kogitari, kogitavi. Sorry, I don't know what's going on. I'm destructive. So kogitavi is I thought. And that V, just like with laudo, shows up. The second bullet point, this is what we're really scared of right now, honestly, is that there's a couple of verbs, and I'll make a list probably for next week, if not before, where the third principal part almost looks nothing like the first two. So we have do, dari, dedi. Dedi doesn't really look like do or dare. It sounds like someone saying dedi, but they have like a weird British accent. So you just need to be aware of these. I'll do everything I can to point them out for the next couple of weeks when these weird ones show up that don't really look like the first two principal parts. I'm gonna do everything I can to like point it out and get you to write it on your vocab sheet. But that happens sometimes. So dodari, we get words like donate, donation, we get data from datum. What word do we get from daddy?
Daddy.
If you like give something to someone and entrust it to them, and then maybe like you make it known that you're giving it to, or you're making it for them, you're dedicated. Yes, dedication, right? So I don't know if that helps, but anyway. Another rule that might be worth writing down is whereas first conjugation often gets this V, second often gets this U. Debeo, debeiri, right? Second conj is the one with the long E. Debui, debui. So they get the UI for some reason. Tereo, tereri, terui. Terui would mean I'm scared. So they get the UI for some reason. Third and fourth sometimes get an X. So we have deco, decra, dixie. Okay, that one you might not in your mind know is coming from deco, decra. You might have to look it up on Wiktionary because it wouldn't be under Dixie. It'd be under deco, which is kind of hard. So yeah, Dixie. If deco means I say, what does Dixie mean? It's still first singular. It's still first singular. So I
Said.
Yeah, said. Good. Or yeah, exactly. Or spoke. It can be like say or speak. Very good, Jaden. Intelligo, intellegera, intellexi is a new verb. I understand would be intelligo. What is intellexi? I
did understand.
Did's okay. You can use did now. If y'all notice, there's been a lot of points where y'all are like wanting to use did, and I'm like, well, let's not use did. You can now, but I'd rather have or has or just verb. So I understood. I have understood. I guess I did understand works too. And then, guys, now we can finally understand what crazy old Julius Caesar was doing with his sassy, smart aleck kind of phrase, Veni Vidi Vici. Because Veni is coming from Venio Venire. Now, this is a weird one because this isn't even changing at all from the first two principal parts. other than the macron, which just affects the pronunciation. So that is another thing that happens every once in a while, just for a couple verbs we have, where the stem really doesn't look any different than the present stem. Yes?
I thought it was overcome, overcame. I came, I saw, I conquered.
It's like came, I saw, I conquered. I've not heard the one you know, but maybe that's another one. I don't know. So Julius Caesar knew what he was doing. He was picking 3 verbs that all happen to start with the letter V, which for him is more like a W, and then he's just going down and doing the 3rd principal parts, because that's what they are. They're the I verb form of the verb. So Waney as I came, Wideo Wideri, Weedy as I saw, I passed and saw, or I have seen, Winko Winkero Wiki, to conquer is I conquered. Yeah, Wiki is kind of weird because like all that really changes is that the N goes bye-bye and the I is long.
The I goes, the N goes bye-bye.
Yeah, look, the N. There's no Winko, Winkero, Wiki. Where did the N go? Who knows? So sometimes it's weird like that. Guys, the biggest challenge that this chapter will pose is you'll see things that you're like, I think that's a verb, but you won't know what verb it's from. Especially if like I'm showing you here, if it starts with a V, there's like way too many things it could be at this point. We have a lot of D verbs. It's a lot, but we'll work through it. And hopefully, I like Wiktionary, honestly, for people at y'all's level. I wish y'all could all use it, but I also don't want people to like use it crutch-like. But it is good for this because you just type in the verb and it's like, this is the pluperfect 3rd person singular active indicative form of Zoom essay. Malachi?
Can I just take something on the board?
No.
So, like, actually.
What, like a letter
Like,
that's
no.
smudged or something? I guess. Don't do anything crazy.
No.
I can stay for a little longer. All right, let's go through the chapter 12 vocab, and then we might have a chance to look at 1 or 2 translations. Remember, guys, once we actually start applying the grammar, it becomes easy. It's only when we are just talking about disembodied grammar without applying it to actual Latin right in front of us that things feel impenetrably boring and maybe also difficult. So there will be 10 of these words on the test tomorrow, and now we'll finally understand why it looks like there was a bunch of long E's written.
Tomorrow.
No, I'm sorry, Friday. But like, don't get caught up on the 3rd declension part of it, that you don't learn these words a little bit. A lot of these are really easy. I think the chapter knows that verbs are really crazy this chapter all of a sudden, so they wanted to give us some easy ones. Adolescens, adolescentis is 3rd declension, meaning adolescent or like a young person, not adult. I might put that. Honest, ani means year, like annual. So I'll either put Asia or Kaiser just to kind of give y'all an easy one.
That's Caesar.
Yeah, it's Caesar. What declension is Asia? Asia.
Asia.
Is it 1st, 2nd, or 3rd declension?
It's first.
Thank you. I hope it's not just Nevaeh that knows it's 1st declension because that's the easiest thing to be able to tell in the world. All right, Kaiser, Kaisaris is 3rd declension. I'm going to pick one of them. I'm also going to pick either mummy or daddy, okay?
Mummy.
So mater and pater, 3rd declension.
We
I'm
had
gonna-
these last year.
Yeah, I know. So that's easy, right?
It's like,
I probably,
this so hard.
I don't know. So I don't think I'll pick medicus or medica, which just means a doctor, because that's almost like too easy. And I'm already giving you at least 1 or 2 easy things. Patientia is patience. It can also mean suffering, which is a little weird.
Yes.
Principia means beginning. Acerbus means bitter. Have you ever heard the word acerbic?
No.
If someone's ever kind of like a little sassy to you, a little rude, you should say, okay, that was very acerbic just now. And they're going to feel really bad because A, they don't know what that means, and B, because then they're being called acerbic, which means like bitter or harsh. You can say like coffee is acerbic. I will put pro on the quiz on Friday because it's a preposition. I think I'll always put prepositions. They give us way too many options. Let's just say it's going to be on behalf of, before, or just for, and kind of ignore the other one, simplify things. Du I will not put because I messed up. It means a long time. Nuper. How about I do put nuper? It means recently. And I'll put 2 or all of the verbs. So I just gave y'all like 8 of the vocab words that are going to be in the quiz.
There's only 10.
Amito, amitera, amisia, missum is to send away. Notice the T is turned into an S in the perfect stem.
No, it's
Tato.
Mito.
Yep. Well, it is, and they're just adding like a prefix to it, basically. So instead of just to send, it's more like to send away or lose. Kato Katara becomes Kekitty. Weird perfect stem. It gets a whole syllable added. And then creo creare is easy. It gets the good old first conjugation V thing for its perfect stem, and it means to create. Any questions? Everyone who put things away,
Guys, sit
you
down.
will probably get a lower score on your vocab quiz.
On your day.
Elijah, you need to like rein it in, buddy. Like, look at what you're doing and ask yourself if that's like remotely acceptable. Jaden?
Between the matter and pater, those two Latin words, are those also going to be on the test?
I might pick either Patientia or Principium.
No, I mean like between.
Oh, Medica. I won't pick Medicus. I think it's too easy in a way that's like, I'll purposely give y'all an easy one with Asia or Kaiser. But I don't know. Medicus, it's doctor. Do y'all know it forever now? Medicus
No.
is doctor? Cool.
No.
Got it.
It's probably
Alright.
Among Us game.
Oh, yeah, we use Medicus and Among Us, right? Sum Medicus. I am the doctor. Remember, doctor in Latin is a little more like teacher. All right. Eundum timorem, blah, 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 Cincimus. Oh, my gosh. What is the person and number? Kira, Caden, Ace, or Riley of Cincimus.
Oh, Centimos
That's
third.
third.
Easy.
Third, and it's
Second.
Not,
It's
it's
first
plural.
First.
So the subject is,
Uh-oh.
but now, what tense is it if it's from Cintio, Centire, Saincy?
We said
S.
Is it present, future, imperfect, perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect? This is actually perfect because it's coming from the third principal part, not the first two. Good Bob. I like that. Well, I hope you heard some things I was saying. Alright. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we will. Okay. Nice. Very good looking notes. And we good handwriting.
I'm going to do this for you.